Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.
Okay, here's how Miro works. See, it's amazing.
What's everyone doing at David's desk? Ever since marketing started using Miro's collaborative online whiteboard, he thinks all our other teams should sign up. Why? He says Miro's making his meetings disappear. And if every team gets on it, that means even less meetings. They're using Miro for brainstorms, mind maps, customer research.
So could we use Miro instead of having another 100 meetings for every round of feedback?
Yep. You can comment, react to ideas, even leave a recording on the board.
And what about presentations?
There are Miro templates for that.
How do you know so much about Miro?
I've actually been using it all along. I just used a Miro board to plan the best vacation.
Okay, I'm on board.
See how Miro users save up to 80 hours every year by meeting less and doing more. Get on board at Miro.com with 3 boards free forever. That's MIRO.com.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. I'm Manu, and joining me today is not Stefan Bienkowski. He is on a well-deserved holiday recovering from a stag do in Ireland, but that's okay. We drafted in a very good replacement in Matt Ford. Matt, nice to have you back. Obviously, you were back on the special with Hertha Berlin. Have you back so soon? It's very nice. How's it going?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for having me back. Happy to stand in for Stefan, and I hope he had a good time on his stag do. Sounds like he did.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope he's still alive. It's been radio silence. Ireland for a stag do sounds like a dangerous proposition. If I'm honest with you, Matt.
Give him a couple of days. I'm sure he'll get in touch.
Yeah, I hope so, because he has to edit this. So, anyways, we have a lot to discuss this week, and I don't want to hold us back too long. So let's just jump into it right after this break. This episode of the Gegenpressing podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines and the latest matchup reports for this year's NBA playoffs. BetOnline is your sports intel headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs. From basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, golf to UFC and boxing. The fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your home. Get into the action today, so head to the website of your mobile device to join. To be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, BELIEVE, to receive your 50% bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. So yeah, Matt, let's start as always with the top of the table. And I think it's pretty safe to say the decision in the title race has been postponed for yet another week. Both those teams actually with very strong performances. Bayern Munich, let's start with Bayern, because I think there was some hope maybe by Schalke fans that they could get something in the Allianz Arena. And this has been probably the most commanding performance that we have seen since Thomas Tuchel has taken over this Bayern Munich side. I mean, it was never really close, was it?
No, I think it was quite wishful thinking, wasn't it? I actually watched or tried to keep an eye on this game in a pub in Dortmund. Obviously, Dortmund was the later kickoff, and I was covering that game, so managed to find somewhere to watch the Bayern game, and for about 21 minutes, there was actually this like a weird phenomenon of raw pot solidarity breaking out between Dortmund fans towards Schalke. I literally heard people in Dortmund shirts saying things like, "Come on, Schalke, please score a goal," or at least try and stay in the game as long as they can. Try and help us out.
Yeah.
Safe to say, about an hour later, that solidarity had well and truly vanished, and the same fans were simply hoping that Schalke get relegated as quickly as possible. So that sense of solidarity in Western Germany certainly didn't last.
Yeah, I guess the moment the goals ticked over, Thomas Müller, it's such a great story, isn't it? Like
yeah, definitely. It's interesting to see him performing so influentially and so authoritatively after what's been a difficult month or so for him, hasn't it? Under Tuchel, I don't know how have you seen that relationship between Tuchel and Müller developing since Tuchel arrived?
I mean, Thomas Müller went on Instagram and complained or made a joke about all the transfer rumors, right, that came about last week. My answer to that is that maybe don't put them in the world in the first place, because we all know why transfer rumors surrounding Thomas Müller get leaked, for political reasons, and why, when Thomas Müller is upset, all of a sudden he gets linked to other clubs. It used to be Manchester United for quite some time, right, Matt? And then, they would quickly find a resolution. And I actually thought it was really interesting the moment these transfer rumors leaked. I think there was like a meeting with him and Herbert Heiner and Oliver Kahn and Hasan Salihamidzic all had something to say. It's like, no, he's going nowhere. We want him to stay here for the rest of his career. And look, who gets the start? I mean, I think for me, it's always been that Thomas Müller has a little bit of what they call in German Freifahrtschein, right? A free ticket. And I think he's quite well tuned into the politics at Bayern Munich that can be very complicated at times, right? And the way the article in Sportbild by Christian Falk was phrased, like, what was it, like 7 coaches and this time frame, and I had to prove myself every time. Why do I always have to prove myself? I'm Thomas Müller. And like, honestly, you can sort of understand that sort of underlined to me where these rumors were coming from in the first place. And I think Thomas Müller knew exactly what he was doing by putting them into the world, right? And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how, this season is almost over. I think for me, the more interesting part comes what will happen to Thomas Müller when in the summer, right? When Thomas Tuchel has to set up the side for next year and has to go through them with training camp, and whether they win the title or not is like almost secondary in this regard. But what is Thomas Müller's future going to be like with this club, and what does that mean to the relationship between, like, how is Tuchel going to ensure that Müller is in his waning years still going to have a dignified presence in the club that makes it work for both sides? And I think that's something that's going to be really difficult to navigate for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think it depends how Tuchel imagines his Bayern Munich setting up. If we go back a month ago when Tuchel took over, he made quite a point, didn't he, of saying not much is going to change. He was taking, obviously, he was referring mainly partly in the short term because it was an international break. He didn't even have his players, and the immediate concern was the home game against Borussia Dortmund. But I think it also applied to the rest of this season. Tuchel's not had any preparation time. He's not had a single transfer window or anything like that with Bayern. So I don't think we've quite seen Thomas Tuchel's Bayern Munich just yet. That's going to obviously have to wait until next season. His relationship with Müller's been interesting. think obviously one of the first big tests for Tuchel was the quarter-final against Manchester City, wasn't it? And it was quite a shock to a lot of people to see Müller not starting, not heavily involved in those games. And Tuchel justified that decision, and I think a lot of people bought it. I think it also made a lot of sense. He said that this is not going to be a Müller game. I think suggesting that obviously Bayern were looking to sit back against City and hit them on the break using the pace, particularly of Leroy Sané. Which I think they actually did quite well, particularly in the first leg, up until the 70th minute or so. Actually worked quite well. Meanwhile, during that game, you could actually see Tuchel consulting very closely with Thomas Müller on the touchline, which I thought was very interesting. Obviously tapping into a player who's, like you said, whose knowledge of Bayern Munich is becoming more and more pronounced and more valuable, I think, the more coaches he plays under. Did you say it was 6 or 7 Bayern Munich coaches he's played under now?
7.
Okay,
the article wrote, I'm just paraphrasing the article from Sportbild, right? And
so increasingly Müller is increasingly one of the few people left involved with Bayern Munich who I suppose represents what people around Bayern and within Bayern would refer to as this whole like Mir San Mir thing that they have going on, particularly given the changes up in the boardroom as well, with Rummenigge and Hoeneß taking a step back. I think probably apart from Müller, the only sort of proper original Bayern players left in that team from the Jupp Heynckes days and going that far back is him, Manuel Neuer. I think potentially Joshua Kimmich represents a bit of that as well to an extent, but increasingly Müller is one of these players who's really representing the heart and soul of Bayern Munich, and be interesting to see what role he plays. He certainly was certainly influential against Schalke on Saturday, although like we said, with all respect to Schalke, I'm not sure if it's really the bar by which we should be measuring Thomas Müller.
Yeah, no, I think you're asking a lot of really good questions here and like pointing out a lot of good things, because it's also interesting to see what happens when Thomas Müller's career does come to an end, and we've seen in the past that the career of a big player like Müller ending doesn't always pass in harmony, right? At Bayern Munich. I think the best example is Oliver Kahn, who they managed the end quite well, and I guess they will try to do something similar here. But there's some other great players that Bayern Munich had where the separation was quite loud. Like the most famous example is Lothar Matthäus, right? But I also think of Giovanni Elber and some of the other guys, and then they fixed it later on. In some cases they did not. But
I think it goes both ways with Bayern Munich, to be honest. For every player, they've gone through so many quality players down the years and so many legendary names that I think it stands to reason that for everyone who has a slightly difficult departure from Bayern, you also have the other side of the coin, and the number of top players with Bayern histories who they managed to retain within the club. So we'll see. I think if you put that to Thomas Müller, I think he'd probably reject any of those ideas straight away. He certainly thinks he's got a few more years left in him. So let's not be putting him out to pasture with his horse, because he does have horses, doesn't he? So let's not be putting him there straight away.
But Matt, that makes me think, because when I was over there last and I covered a Bayern Munich game, he actually went to the mixed zone and he complained about a muscle ache, right? Famously, he walked into the mixed zone with a phone on his ear, and we already all thought, okay, well, that's it. He's not talking to us today. It was actually a phone, not a wallet or passport, because we all know the trick.
Yes, that's also been done before.
Yeah, but he actually then said, okay, he put his phone down and said we have a few moments, because he was actually up for a medical appointment inside the Allianz Arena, and that's the first time I've heard Thomas Müller complain about muscle injuries and that kind of thing, right? Because he's famously indestructible how many games has he missed with injuries? Not many, right? So that made me think like, oh, well, he's actually human. He has muscle aches like the rest of us. But that makes you think that, okay, he is at 33 now. And as you said, there is games now that are not Thomas Müller games. And I guess that's kind of leads into, because okay, Schalke done and dusted. We get to talk about Schalke as part of the relegation battle in a moment, right? But I want to focus on the title race because we are going to get into the next stage. We have 2 matches left. For Bayern Munich, and all due respect to Köln, right? Okay, it's in Köln, so it's difficult. We never know what's going to happen on that final match day, right? But the title is probably going to be won or lost on match day 33 when Bayern Munich hosts Leipzig. And the kind of question is, and Leipzig is, a team in form. They are on course for the Champions League. There is a legitimate concern here, I think, that if you're a Bayern Munich fan, that Leipzig will get something from the Allianz. And remember, Leipzig don't have to win this game for the table to flip-flop, right? A draw would be enough. Is Leipzig a Thomas Müller game? That is a really good question here, like looking ahead, right? And the way Tuchel manages the squad, is this one where you feel Thomas Müller? Do you need a player like, I personally would always play Thomas Müller because I think he's still an impact player, but it's an interesting question.
Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.
Today, we discuss Miro. Today, I want to talk about the hellscape that is technical diagramming, right? Everybody's nodding their heads right now, And there is a potential solution that I want to share. There was one name that several people brought up. I did some digging, and it's kind of nuts how much this program Miro has for developers. I have to share this. It could potentially be a game changer for you. So my favorite part about Miro is that half the work is already done. Like right now, typically we spend hours starting diagrams from scratch, gathering information. You get buy-in from every team. That's a lot of work to do. But Miro has a full set of integrations with the tools you're probably already using. And they also offer open APIs and SDKs for custom solutions for all those niche diagramming use cases we have to do, right? So the end result is the same, but it doesn't take forever. It's a massive, massive time saver. I'm transforming basic flowcharts and network architectures, and it all lives in one place. So are you using Miro? Have you used it? I want to hear. That's MIRO.com.
Isn't it?
Absolutely. I could probably understand it if Thomas Tuchel made the decision that the RB Leipzig is also not a Thomas Müller game, in the potentially the pace might risk bypassing a slightly slower Thomas Müller these days a little bit. However, as much as I would understand the argument, I'd probably end up thinking similar to you and similar to Louis van Gaal, to be honest, that Müller plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you are right to point out that this is coming into match day 33, definitely the one that I had in my calendar as well for where the next twist in the title race could take place. I think particularly since Dortmund surrendered the lead back to Bayern, I thought, with all due respect to Hertha Berlin, Werder Bremen and Schalke, Bayern Munich, as wobbly as they have been, they were never going to drop any points against those three. And so it's proven. The bigger question was, can Dortmund keep the pace and remain a point behind up until match day 33? And they have done pretty spectacularly. Probably get onto them in a sec, I imagine. They're now in a position where both teams are facing banana skins, I think, on match day 33. You mentioned Bayern at home to RB. Absolutely, they're coming into form at a really good time. Which seems to be a trend with RB in recent seasons. They don't seem to be able to perform for entire seasons. They seem to take months off at a time. However, in this particular season, they seem to be coming good at just about the right time. Obviously, I saw them in Freiburg a couple of weeks ago in the German Cup semi-final when they were they were 4-0 up against Freiburg at half time. They absolutely blew them away. Really helps that they've got Dani Olmo back fit. The way he links up with Nkunku and Werner is dangerous. It's impressive to see, and obviously they're going into a cup final. Is it their fourth cup final in 5 years? I think.
Yeah, it is.
So it's competition they're making their own, and they're in good form going into it. You could see that against Bremen at the weekend. They kept going till the end. They got, was it 96th or 97th minute winner in the end. They wore Bremen down. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if they got a result in Munich. They're certainly on form for it, and however, equally, I also wouldn't be surprised if Dortmund slipped up, as many teams do in Augsburg. Difficult place to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Keep in mind, Leipzig with a result pretty much have the Champions League spot nailed down, so they have something to play for. But let's go and switch to Dortmund. And you mentioned it, their next fixture is against Augsburg, the suburb of Munich. Matt, for all due respect.
I mean, you're from down there, so I'll leave you to decide that. I think there's probably a few people in Augsburg who would dispute that their city is a suburb of Munich.
That's the 1860 fan coming through.
Yes, perhaps.
But you're quite right. I actually thought the Dortmund game was quite interesting because I was worried about how they would respond to this really big Bayern Munich result, and it was impressive how quickly they put this game away. You were there, so give us your impressions about what you saw there.
If I was going to describe Borussia Dortmund in a word at the moment, it would be they're in a tunnel. I'm extremely convinced by them. I think they've gone through. At least I feel like they've gone through their emotional dips and their disastrous slip-ups. And I've been there to see a lot of it in person. I was in Stuttgart when they threw away a lead. First of all, 2-goal lead against 10-man relegation strugglers. They did it twice. And I thought after that game, I spoke to Edin Terzic, and honestly, I thought he was about to cry. He looked so distraught at what had just happened. I thought there were about to be tears. Similarly, in Bochum, a couple of weeks later, the emotion on display was sheer anger from the Dortmund delegation. Terzic, Cahill, but also a lot of the players. I think rightly so. I think you've probably been through it, but the refereeing decision was wrong. So they were about to be angry. Now, however, I don't sense any anger at in Dortmund anymore. I don't sense any sadness. I also don't necessarily sense massive anticipation and excitement. I really do. I get the impression that Terzic and his team have been through all that, and they're now very much in an absolutely clinical and concentrated bubble. And I think that is, for the most part, showing on the pitch. Like you said, it was impressive how knowing the Bayern result just before, that they also flew into a convincing lead by half time. And there was a little wobble in the second half. Julian Brandt referred to it as Stuttgart vibes, where they allowed Borussia Mönchengladbach into the game a little bit. Benzebaini with a pen, Lars Stindl with a good effort, and in fact, just after Stindl's goal, he actually had a similar effort, which was just tipped away by Gregor Kobel. which was a very good save. And had that gone in, it would have been 4-3 all of a sudden with about 4 or 5 minutes to play, I think, including injury time. So that would have been very interesting to see where that had gone. I actually joked to a colleague at half time that, could we potentially see a Schalke situation where Schalke famously came down from being 4-0 down at half time in Dortmund to draw 4-4. We all sort of just laughed it off. Went, not this time. But suddenly there was actually a chance that it could have been 4-3 with a few minutes to go. Dortmund do still have those little wobbles in them. And be interesting to see if that if that little side of Dortmund rears its head in Augsburg. But in general, like I said, I've been very, very impressed with them. What's it been in the last 3 home games? 4-0 against Frankfurt, 6-0 against Wolfsburg. I thought at one point they could have been on their way to revenging their 12-0 defeat against Gladbach from 77 at one point. But that they took the foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah, what is it? 4-0 is the most dangerous lead in football.
For Dortmund, clearly.
It did feel a little bit like that. I thought the first half was very impressive. Sebastian Haller in particular stood out to me, but Daniel Mahlen as well for weeks now, right? I actually drew a little bit of a parallel, and we didn't even talk about him in the Bayern segment, but how Serge Gnabry has become this hero out of nowhere almost for Bayern Munich, right? It almost feels like Daniel Mahlen has been for longer now, obviously, but has also been like that unsung hero almost for Dortmund because he's been so effective for so many weeks now. Really becoming the player that I think that a lot of people hoped he would be when they signed him from PSV, right? And I think they have a really good mix right now in the attack. And you can also just tell that Sebastian Haller is becoming fitter and fitter, right? I think we have to all remember that he came back from cancer treatment 4 months ago. That's incredible. Just to let that sink in for a moment. The Dortmund's line is led by a guy who's overcome cancer 4 months ago. And I think this was his best performance yet.
Yeah, totally agree. It is an incredible story. I think both in the footballing sense, but also just purely in a human sense. It's a miraculous recovery that he's gone through. So all power to him. You mentioned two of Dortmund's front three. Obviously, the other being Karim Adeyemi. All three have come good in the second part of the season. I don't think that's an accident. Those three were brought in the summer for quite a hefty outlay, and I asked Edin Terzic directly after the game. Said, "Is the performances we're seeing now from Haller, Adeyemi, and Mahlen in recent months? Is that how you actually imagined your attack being at the start of the season back in summer, before obviously Haller's diagnosis? There was also injuries to Adeyemi and Mahlen, and he said, yeah, absolutely, exactly how we imagined it. But obviously you can't legislate for what's happened. But I think now you're seeing now about 7 or 8 months later what Edin Terzic had in mind with those three. Haller in particular, it's not just his goal scoring in the box. It's the way that he drops deep. He acts as a pivot. He has a fantastic first touch. The fact that I think it helps so much that both Adeyemi and Mahlen, regardless of which wing either of them start on, they both know they have that pivot in the middle in Haller around which they can move. And yeah, some of the link-up play was fantastic. But yeah, I think Haller, obviously the standout on Saturday, involved directly in all 4 of those goals. I think in the build-up to Mahlen's header, it was Haller's run and shot, wasn't it, which deflected into Mahlen's path.
Yeah.
For the penalty, which Jude Bellingham put away, it was Haller who won it by attracting the foul. And yeah, his little back-heeled flick for the third goal was just showed how much confidence he has suddenly. And why not? The journey he's been on personally over the past 7 or 8 months gives him reason to be optimistic and positive and confident, and he's certainly showing that. Borussia Dortmund must be thinking, what if all three had been available from the start of the season? But there we go. Such is football, and I think more importantly, in Haller's point of view, such is life. So fair play to him.
Yeah, I guess that really leads to the next question, or like almost looking ahead before we shift our focus to the relegation battle. There's almost a sense that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for Borussia Dortmund to beat Bayern Munich to the title, and we just pointed out 3 reasons why that might not be the case, right? That there is maybe, the side is really just coming to form now and finding themselves right now. Bellingham aside, there is no major transfer rumors about any of these players leaving, right? Adeyemi, Malen, Haller will all 3 still be there next year. Is this like I'm toying with this, going back and forth with this, because I think there is a lot more turmoil coming at Bayern Munich this summer. Is this a once in a lifetime opportunity, you think? Because like they kind of framed it like that after the Bochum game, didn't they? But I'm actually not so sure it is.
Yeah, I'm also not sure. I think the same point applies both to next season as it does to the final 2 games of this season, in that it's simply not in Borussia Dortmund's hands whether it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity or not. In terms of next season, it all depends on the various internal intrigues and politics going on at Bayern Munich and how they come through that, and how Thomas Tuchel is given the backing to set up Bayern the way he wants. I think if Tuchel is given the ideal backing and situation and the ideal atmosphere around the camp and everything he needs, I'd back Thomas Tuchel to take Bayern Munich to the Bundesliga title next year. Absolutely. I think he's without doubt on paper the best coach in the Bundesliga. So I'd back that. But obviously, there's a lot of big ifs there as to whether Bayern will be able to afford him that space that he needs. Similarly, on the last 2 days of this season, as I said before, I think Dortmund in a tunnel now. I as much as I think the Augsburg away is a potential banana skin, fair enough. It's always tricky. I don't think Dortmund will slip up now. I think they'll win both of their games, but it's not in their hands.
Yeah, and that's their own doing. With
all the understanding that I do have for injuries and particularly illness that you can't legislate for, Dortmund have also got to look at themselves again. Even without those 3 on form, they've thrown away games. Also had a few responses from Schalke fans on social media pointing that out actually, and taking issue with Dortmund fans being upset at them for not helping out, when particularly a couple of weeks ago Dortmund weren't able to help Schalke out against Bochum. So clearly, any ideas of that relationship ever becoming friendly, I can forget that as well, can't I? So
that's a great transition. Bochum and Schalke and Hertha and Stuttgart are all in pretty big trouble. Let's start maybe with the obvious one. We've spoken about Hertha in great length, so I don't want to dwell on it too much in this show, because there's an entire special that you can, if you subscribe to the Substack, you can listen to 45 minutes to 50 minutes of Matt, Stefan, and I talking about all the problems that Hertha have on and off the field. So go check that out. But Matt, 5-2 defeat to Köln. This was never really that close. It looks like they're done.
And yet Hertha are actually ahead. They actually took the lead.
I know, but it didn't feel close.
Believe it or not, they were winning.
I know, but they scored, I didn't get the sense that lead was real. You know what I mean? It sounds weird.
That's saying a lot. When you a 2-1 lead away at Cologne of all teams, and you think, this can't hold. They can't hold on to this.
It held 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not close. And then what happened next was a demonstration by Cologne that maybe doesn't necessarily really reflect their strengths either. I saw someone tweet this. I can't remember who it was, but the fact that Hertha are making Cologne look world class. That's everything you need to know about Hertha. And I think that's a really fair point. This Hertha side is probably done. Because are they really going to be able to claw back, what is it now, 5 points in 2 games to relegation playoff place? That's not to a non-relegation place. That's to the playoff place. 6 points to Bochum. The only upside that they have is that they have the better goal differential than both Schalke and Bochum, but their goal differential is way worse than Stuttgart. So I think we can write off Hertha at this point.
I think we can, unfortunately for Hertha Berlin, and I think as we pointed out at the end of the big Hertha chat that we had last week, it's a shame for their supporters who even on a Friday night had thousands of them had travelled a huge distance across the country from Berlin to Cologne, to see their team concede another 5 goals. One of them scored by Davy Selke, who only left them in January, which must have been an extra bit of salt rubbed in the wound. As for the game itself, I actually thought this had a lot about Hertha, in that I think there seems to be a little bit of wasted potential there going forward. I've always been a big fan of Doja Lukebakio.
Yeah, me too.
I really like the way he plays. I like the way, whether down the middle or drifting out to the right or left. I love how he finds space. Love how he's immediately looking to be penetrative, and obviously he has goals in him as well. And Hertha's second goal came precisely from that sort of pattern, and the perfect way to use Lukebakio. A big ball forward, but well targeted. A good run from Lukebakio, and he set up Jovetic for it. So that, in a way, that shows what Hertha can do going forward. Also, if you look at just the names, Marco Richter has made Germany appearances. Lucas Toussaint is not a bad player. There's Ngankam and Boetios on the bench. That there's Bundesliga experience there. Okay, I'm not saying these are Champions League, even Europa League level players, but there's certainly enough attacking talent there to be mid-table in the Bundesliga.
I think Lukebakio has that potential. He's a Belgian national team player.
Yeah. And yet,
the rest maybe not, but Lukebakio certainly does.
Certainly, and yet I thought they were massively let down at the other end. I think the fact that at least 2, maybe even 3 of the goals came from crosses, set pieces. 2 of them were headers, and then I think one of the Hubers finishes. I think was it the flick. That he flicks into the roof of the net, comes from another cross. So the Hertha aren't defending crosses. These are absolute basics. The sort of goals that you would expect not to concede, the ones that you can head clear, and they're even conceding those. And I thought perhaps the worst one from a Hertha point of view was the third put in by Elias Skiri. But that goal, it came from a Hertha Berlin throw down by Cologne's corner flag, or down by their own corner flag at the other end of the pitch. And the way that I think it's Tigges and Miner have absolutely outstripped the entire Hertha defence for pace up the whole length of the pitch. I think it said a lot about Hertha's shortcomings, not just from an organisational point of view, but also from the point of view of being able to compete, being able to summon the energy and the desire to get back and chase back like that. And it simply wasn't there. I thought it was just, from a Hertha point of view, sad to see, but Cologne punished them.
Well, as they would say in German, they're Haufen Söldner. They're a bunch of mercenaries. Do you really expect them to, put the neck on the line for Hertha? The way the team was put together. I mean, we talked about all the money that was pumped into this team that's now gone and burned off and missing. But are we really surprised? Because this is not a cohesive group.
Yeah, no, I mean, at this point of the season, no, certainly not. But it's looking like quite a sad way to go.
Yeah, totally. The question is, who's going to follow them? Because it feels almost like Russian roulette at this point, doesn't it? are we counting Augsburg out? Like, where do we draw the line here? Where do you draw the line? I think
on Twitter over the weekend, I drew the line at Bochum, but it was pointed out by a Schalke fan that Hoffenheim aren't out the woods yet. And I mean, okay, fair enough. They've got a tough game at the weekend. I think Hoffenheim have got Union, haven't they, at the weekend? If I'm correct me if I'm wrong.
Let me double check that.
Yeah.
I have the Bundesliga app open just for that. Yes. So Bochum has Hertha. Hoffenheim have Union at home.
Yes.
And then,
but nevertheless, I would still
Stuttgart have played Mainz.
Yeah, I'd see Hoffenheim just about safe, probably. Given I think it'll come down to Bochum, Schalke, or Stuttgart. And I must admit, I can see reasons why all three would stay in, and I can. Yeah, it's at this point it really is an absolutely impossible one to call. How do you see it? Which way are you going?
I'm surprised you're keeping Augsburg out of this, because if they lose to Dortmund and the other two out of three win, then they're definitely in it.
I mean, Manu, I'd like to see Hoffenheim and Augsburg go down. I really would. No offense to Hoffenheim and Augsburg,
I think we're both in agreement there, especially because Heidenheim might come up, right? So
not with two games to go. But yeah, I think Bochum, Schalke, Stuttgart, and yet again, all three have shown reasons for optimism. I think all three have absolutely shown that they have quality going forward. Although one caveat there would be that Schalke are going to be missing Marius Bülter at the weekend, aren't they?
They are.
For his yellow card, that's a massive blow, because you do wonder where the goals are going to come from if not from him. That could be a problem for them. On the other hand, I think, Bochum have shown, again, particularly going forward, that they have goals in them, particularly from Asano, and most particularly from Antwi Adje, who's been fantastic to watch all season. Scored a fantastic goal. The opener against Augsburg was an absolutely fantastic finish into the roof of the net. And it was also his cross which brought about the own goal for the second. So he's a man with goals in him. Once again, Anthony Lasilla, the captain, always good for a long range strike, isn't he? Always keen to have a shot at goal, no matter from how far out.
So Matt, next match day, we've kind of gone through it, right? So Schalke have Frankfurt at home. Frankfurt looked a lot better this weekend. And we can discuss Frankfurt briefly before we wrap this up. Hertha, Bochum have at Hertha, we already mentioned Hoffenheim hosting Union. The final match day, though, I should also mention Stuttgart against Mainz, right? But the final match day, Bochum at home against Leverkusen, which could be tough depending on what's happening with the Europa League, right? I think that's my big asterisk on everything that Leverkusen does. It all depends on what's happening in the Europa League. Hertha have Wolfsburg, but I think they're going to be done. Schalke will play in Leipzig, who I think might be qualified for the Champions League at that point. But as also Stuttgart against Hoffenheim head-to-head. And that could be a big one to watch.
I mean, I certainly think out of those two that Schalke have the toughest running.
Yeah.
I think,
Well, it depends on Leipzig, right? What if they're already on the beach?
Even so, I think it's a massive ask. It's a massive ask for Schalke to go away there and try and get a result. Whereas, the fact that I think they've got the tougher run in Schalke, and particularly missing Bülter this weekend against Frankfurt, isn't it? I think that definitely puts them at a disadvantage. They do have the advantage that they have one more point than Stuttgart, which is at least positive. And they can also, one more positive for Schalke would be that Leverkusen, despite playing pretty terribly away at Stuttgart, managed to equalise with that penalty. Schalke do have that advantage, but it's not looking particularly good. One thing I would say for all three of them I've been to all three a few times this season. I've been so impressed with the atmosphere at all three stadiums.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. It'd be purely from that point of view, it'd be such a shame to see any of them go down. Three of the loudest and most raucous and fanatical atmospheres in German football: Bochum, Schalke, and Stuttgart. So even from that point of view, it'd be a massive shame, it'd be a massive loss for any of them to go down.
Well, that's why I sort of keeping my fingers crossed. HSV coming up with a pretty late resurgence in the second Bundesliga, right? It was a really big match day for them. And they are now just 1 point behind second place Heidenheim. So I still have some hope that HSV somehow managed to jump into second place and we avoid a scenario where we have Hoffenheim, Augsburg, and Heidenheim in the Bundesliga. That's no disrespect to any of these teams. They are merit, but as you said, we are going to potentially lose two massive fan groups in a league that advertises itself as being a league for the fans, right? So it would be nice to have it at least somewhat balanced out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and yet, I mean, I think you may be doing a slight disservice to Heidenheim.
I know.
Grouping them in along with Hoffenheim and Augsburg. But is it Frank Schmidt? Is it the coach?
Yeah, and he's done an amazing job.
He's been at Heidenheim since about 1830, I think. So. And he's done fantastic work there. Again, they're a very small club from a very small town, but backed, as I understand it, backed by a consortium of local businesses. Particularly Voigt there. They might not be the most spectacular club from the biggest place with the biggest fan base, but nevertheless, I think actually a decent advert for quite sustainable, well-run football in Germany. So I wouldn't quite bracket them alongside Hoffenheim.
I mean, it's just the amount of you won't see thousands of Heidenheim fans traveling to a place like Frankfurt. Is what I'm saying.
It's also difficult to go away to Heidenheim because have you ever been? The ground's on top of a hill. It's a serious walk. So,
does it even have a direct train connection? Is the other question.
No, it takes a few changes as well.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I can remember looking at it once, and I'm like, this is impossible to get to.
Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 changes, and then a march up a hill. So yeah.
It's I just miss the big stadiums in many ways, right? Like one day we have to do a podcast where we put together our ideal Bundesliga. And obviously, like for me, the dream scenario this year would have been Kaiserslautern and HSV to come back up. Didn't happen. HSV is still a good chance. I do like those small stories. I did write an article about Heidenheim this year because you are right. There is a lot there, and there's a story that I don't want to poo-poo on, right? Because they do everything right. It's just, for me, it's more about, with Darmstadt come up, again, that's a traditional club, but it's also not a huge club. But then you also lose Schalke and Hertha and potentially Stuttgart on top of that. That's a lot of big clubs gone, not being replaced by other big clubs, is what I'm trying to say, right? So, yeah. But again, it's based on merit. It's based on merit.
Yeah, absolutely, and particularly frustrating. I think similar to the Hertha situation, particularly frustrating given the talent they have on paper and the talent they also show from time to time. I've seen quite a bit of Stuttgart in the past month, obviously against Dortmund in the league, and I was there as well for the cup semi-final against Frankfurt, which Stuttgart started so well, particularly that front five that they have with Thiago Thomas and Silas in behind Guirassy, and Guirassy has been injured for a lot of the season, but he's been fit for the past month, and he's made a massive difference to them. Playing a quite similar role to Sebastian Haller at Dortmund, actually. That role of sort of dropping deep as a pivot with good wingers either side of him. Really important player. Also some and lots of good assist and set up potential from Wagnerman and Sousa. Sousa particularly from set pieces. Really good delivery. They do have goals in them there, and I think combined with that atmosphere, they do suck late goals into the Cannstatter Kurve as well there. It's just a shame they can never manage to do it for more than half an hour at a time, and that explains why they are where they are. But
yeah, there's also all that off-field stuff. I was with them in the US in November, Matt. Traveled with the team. I literally traveled with the team in this case, through Texas. And obviously, when you embed it, you learn a lot of things, right? Behind the scene things. And this was when Mislintat, around the last final weeks of Sven Mislintat, right? And he was with the squad and all that. And it's such a complicated club. You know,
we could probably do a similar episode on Stuttgart.
I actually just thought we should, because
actually,
yeah, it is, because it is such a massive club in such a massive, wealthy city, right? I mean, there is no reason Stuttgart shouldn't be what Bayern Munich is, based on where they are, right? As a club in the city and the wealth that is in Baden-Württemberg, and the way it is not quite as centralized as Bavaria, but you know what I mean, right? But the politics, you know, the things that you learn when you're with them, you just kind of think to yourself, I was like, is this a kindergarten?
No, absolutely. No, I've had similar experiences with Stuttgart over the past few years, to be honest. And yeah, sounds like I've heard similar things to you. But I think it's a shame on that level. It's a shame on the immediate sporting level, given the talent that's in that club. It's a shame given the massive support for the club and the sheer size of the club. But yeah, I think absolutely. If you want to spend a few hours talking about VfB Stuttgart, then I'd be happy to help, because there's a lot to get into.
Let's pencil that in, because I think that is a really interesting topic. Maybe we wrap up, why do big clubs in German football struggle, and we use Stuttgart as an example. I think
they
our
are
listeners
one of
would
the
absolutely
biggest
enjoy
examples.
it. Yeah, they're a great example. But I do, before we wrap this up, want to briefly touch on things going on in Frankfurt, with Oliver Glasner. We did talk about his departure in the transfer show last week, but I thought the reaction by Frankfurt fans was really interesting, in terms that they seem very upset that Glasner is leaving, right? Which makes sense. He's won the biggest trophy that they have won in the last. When was the last time they won the German championship? In the 50s?
Well, they won
right?
they won the German Cup a few years ago.
Yeah, but I would rank the Europa League slightly higher.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's been a huge achievement, and it's been pretty incredible to see the short time in which the relationship between Oliver Glasner and Eintracht Frankfurt, and particularly the sporting director Markus Kruscher. Although I think we were talking before, you said that also some of the relationships with other figures in the Frankfurt hierarchy are broken down. I think it's happened very, very quickly. What I find interesting is that the way those relationships are broken down, was at the same time, as we've seen with the reaction of the Frankfurt fans, Glasner's standing with the fans is actually huge. Now that I know you mentioned, obviously he's won the cup, he's won a major European trophy with them. Of course, they're going to love him. I don't think you can take that for granted. Oliver Glasner has, I think, perhaps even by his own admission, he's never had the best relationship with, or any sort of relationship really, with a major, huge, fanatical fan base that the size of Eintracht Frankfurt. So obviously he arrived in Frankfurt from Wolfsburg, where, with all due respect, the atmosphere and the fan culture around the club is a little bit different. It's a much, much, much smaller scale, and. When I was in Stuttgart a couple of weeks ago for that semi-final, Glasner he hinted as much himself, saying that it's taken him some time to get used to what goes on surrounding a big club like Frankfurt, and the fact that he was facing so much criticism in the press. Regarding a poor Bundesliga season, whilst he was arguing that we might be ninth, but we're also in the final of the German Cup, and we got knocked out of the Champions League in the last 16 by the eventual Italian champions. I mean, in any other year, that's pretty good season for Eintracht Frankfurt. But he said it shows just how much the expectations have changed. And Glasner himself was admitting that he perhaps underestimated that a little bit, being a massive traditional club in that way. A few moments earlier, he was sat there in a muddy, dirty t-shirt because moments earlier he'd gone belly sliding on the pitch in front of the Frankfurt fans in the corner, and he said, he did that because it seemed that he was learning what it's like to be backed by this, this massive support, huge club, huge following, and developing a rapport with a massive fan base, perhaps for the first time in his coaching career. So I think it's quite interesting now that relationship has become so positive. The fans love him. He's learning to love the fans and to engage with them. But it's the technical relationships with his sporting director Markus Kruscher and with others in the club, which has broken down. I think people might have perhaps expected it to go the other way with Oliver Glasner.
Yeah, maybe the one thing that I need to add, I mean, you're quite right to point all of this out. I thought it was really interesting that this is now the second club where relationships have broken down between him and the decisions makers above him. Because the same thing happened at Wolfsburg, didn't it?
It did, although I mean, which caveat I'm going to add, and
Schmatke.
Exactly, and it just so happens I've actually spent this morning writing an article about Jörg Schmatke, given the reported Liverpool connections.
I wrote that article last week. Yes, and, I know exactly where you're going with this.
Jörg Schmatke is a let's say an interesting character in German football. Going back over the past 20 years, he's managed to fall out with quite a few people. He's had some fantastic successes with various clubs, but he's also managed to leave a little bit of burnt or a little bit of scorched earth behind him as well. So I'm not necessarily sure if I would put the breakdown in Wolfsburg all at Oliver Glasner's door.
It just adds an interesting wrinkle to the Schmatke story, is what I'm trying to say, right? Because we always assumed it was one-sided, it was Schmatke, and because he had that reputation even before he was at Wolfsburg, right? His relationship, he's always was very good at finding talent, both coaches and players, but he was also always very good at having relationships break down eventually. At any club he was, and that probably stopped him from not becoming a sporting director at a big club like Bayern or Dortmund, right? Obviously it's not stopping him from becoming a sporting director at Liverpool, but that's a different story. But
it's a shame that Chris hasn't made it today, isn't it? Because I could have ranked Liverpool alongside Aachen. About where they belong. Sorry.
I'm sure he's going to listen back with a smile. But I think it does add an interesting element to this Glasner story, that because maybe the breakdown relationship wasn't as one-sided as we thought.
Yes, perhaps not. And I think that there's always several truths to these things. I think some of just bringing it back to Frankfurt, I think some of the criticism of Glasner this season, which I do think is legitimate, is that particularly given the Champions League schedule that they had in the first half of the season, the fact that he barely rotated, he pretty much stuck with the same 11. Which obviously, it saw them through their Champions League group. Although obviously Napoli was a step too far. But it's got to the point now where in the second half of the season they have looked completely reliant on Randall Kolo Muani, others have seemed completely shattered. I'm thinking particularly Daichi Kamada, who I think has looked very, very tired at times, despite he actually come back into form the past week or so. Good goal in Stuttgart, scored a pen against Mainz. I can understand the criticism from, and particularly from Markus Kruscher, I think has made these sort of criticisms that he's not happy with the way the Bundesliga season has turned out. Fair enough. I also, I don't want to sit on the fence, but I also think it's a legitimate response from Glasner to say, I mean, what more do you want? You're Eintracht Frankfurt, you're ninth in the Bundesliga, German Cup final, and you got knocked out of the Champions League by the Italian champions in the last 16. Is it really that bad?
I mean, the Bundesliga results were probably disappointing, but no, if they win the German Cup, who cares? Because he's still in the Europa League. So, which is, for them, that is really where they want. If the club wants to grow and be what they are, can potentially be in German football, because I think they're a sleeping giant. Being consistently in the Champions League or Europa League is what gets you there, right? That extra money.
Absolutely.
Right.
Totally get that, but I think these things also take time. And to be honest, I think there are enough people around Eintracht Frankfurt and also at board level in Frankfurt who know that. I think they are making the right steps. They have done a semi-good job of establishing themselves in European competition in the last few years.
Yeah.
You're not going to have it every single year. A lot of the money that they've earned through those cup, through those European Cup runs, I think has been invested very wisely, particularly in the stadium infrastructure. They're currently in the process of expanding the stadium, aren't they? Which is going to include, I believe, another several thousand standing terraces, as well as extra sort of business VIP boxes. So again, a good example of sustainable infrastructural development in Frankfurt. I think, all things considered, I do tend to come down a little bit more on the side of Glasner and that argument that, in the great scheme of things, Frankfurt having a bad Bundesliga season, but in the bigger picture, it's that they're actually still doing very well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Matt, I think we can probably talk for hours about this, but we're almost out of time.
One final mention: we can't let this go without mentioning Aurelio Busa's screamer for Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yes,
absolutely fantastic finish.
Absolutely, and I mean, there is a good chance that there is going to be another parade in Frankfurt at the end of the season. So don't forget about that either. There's, I wouldn't put it beyond Eintracht Frankfurt to beat RB Leipzig in the final in Berlin. But yes, let's wrap this up. As always, this show is brought to you by BetOnline. Matt, thank you so much again for coming on. Here's like your 30-40 seconds on just telling people where they can find you, what you've been working on, anything you want to plug.
All my stuff is on my Twitter account. That's Matt_4D. Everything's on there. I've been covering the Bundesliga title race in depth for the past few months, and I'll continue to do so. Admittedly, not this weekend. I'm actually away this weekend, but I'm fingers crossed that the deciding game will get postponed until the final match day when I can cover it properly. But I'll be watching from afar, and I should be in Dortmund on the final day. Where it could be an interesting one. So if you want to have a follow and keep on track of all that, then feel free.
Yeah, Matt does excellent work. Please give him a follow. And we'll be back with our regular lineup this week. Stefan should be back too, hopefully recovered, and we'll be back soon. Until then, auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen, danke.
In Sicht.
Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair. And there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.
Okay, here's how Miro works. See, it's amazing.
What's everyone doing at David's desk? Ever since marketing started using Miro's collaborative online whiteboard, he thinks all our other teams should sign up. Why? He says Miro's making his meetings disappear. And if every team gets on it, that means even less meetings. They're using Miro for brainstorms, mind maps, customer research.
So could we use Miro instead of having another 100 meetings for every round of feedback?
Yep. You can comment, react to ideas, even leave a recording on the board.
And what about presentations?
There are Miro templates for that.
How do you know so much about Miro?
I've actually been using it all along. I just used a Miro board to plan the best vacation.
Okay, I'm on board.
See how Miro users save up to 80 hours every year by meeting less and doing more. Get on board at Miro.com with 3 boards free forever. That's MIRO.com.